Yeah, good morning, everybody. Still morning. Good afternoon, I guess. Today we're here to talk about automating certificate management with exportable public certificates. I'm Zach Miller. I'm a principal security SA. I cover our cryptography services. And Praveen, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. My name is Praveen Nair. I'm a security specialist at AWS, focused on data protection and privacy. I'm hoping everybody at the end are able to hear me fine. If not, I'm okay to speak up a little bit. I sometimes speak on a lower note, so please be frank enough to let me know if I'm speaking on a lower note. Thank you. So that's my introduction. I'll pass it on to Zach.
Awesome. Yeah, so like I said, today we're going to talk about exportable certificates with a service called AWS Certificate Manager. You may be familiar with this launch, but the basic idea is that in the past, we had certificates that you could issue from, public certificates, I should say, that you could issue from ACM, and you could assign those or bind those to resources that were integrated with ACM, right? So you could assign it to a load balancer, application load balancer, or an API gateway, or CloudFront. And customers said, hey, I have these use cases where I have a firewall that runs in my data center or runs on EC2 and AWS, and these aren't things that are integrated with ACM, and I still want to get public certificates to those devices. And so that's why we built this new feature where you're able to export the private key of public certificates. And so I'll talk a little bit about what that feature is and a little bit more detail. We'll go through some of the challenges that we see customers face when it comes to certificate management in general. And in particular, again, with these kind of non-integrated services or devices, how you can handle managed renewal or automated renewal. And Praveen has some pretty cool code and demo that he's going to show that we built that shows you how to kind of automate some of these renewals, right? So we'll talk about public certificates. I'll talk about the challenges with installing them. And a lot of you are probably already familiar with some of these challenges. We'll go into a kind of a deep dive of the architecture and the code, and then Praveen will show a demo of how it works. And do feel free to raise your hand, ask questions, interrupt us. That's totally fine. We want to keep it interactive. So if you do have questions throughout, let us know. Happy to answer those. Okay, so like I mentioned before, we have this service, AWS Certificate Manager. It is used to issue both public and private certificates. And it has this nice feature called managed renewal, where again, with things like ALB, about 60 days before the certificate is about to expire, ACM will issue a new certificate. It will bind that certificate to the same resource, say like the ALB or API gateway, and it'll handle that renewal for you, right? And there's kind of two mechanisms for domain validation. There's email validation and DNS name validation. We highly, highly recommend you use DNS name validation because it allows you to have that no-touch, not think about certificate renewal experience, right? Where email validation is still pretty simple, but you have to click a link in an email, and many times customers will be on vacation, or that person's left the company, or whatever the reason is, right? That email somehow gets missed, that link doesn't get clicked, you could face an outage or something of that nature, right? We don't want that. So highly, highly recommend you use DNS name validation, because it just means you have to create a DNS record, a CNAME record that basically says, hey, yeah, I own this domain, right? And so, again, like what we saw with customers is they were like, I love the managed experience of assigning this certificate to an ALB and renewal. I don't have to think about certificates. That's great. But I have EC2 instances where I run Nginx and terminate TLS there. And I have a maybe Palo Alto next-gen firewall that I use on-prem, and I need a certificate for that. So how do I do that? And they want to consolidate down to one certificate provider. And so we built this feature called Exportable Public Certificates. And another nice feature of it, too, is you have the same type of access control you're used to with IAM, of course, and it's integrated with AWS CloudTrail and Amazon CloudWatch, so you get nice observability on how your certificates are used and kind of all the details around rotation and things like that, right? And so when we're talking about like the use cases for this, I called out quite a few of them already, but you might have servers or where you're terminating TLS on another cloud provider. And a lot of our customers are multi-cloud. You might have on-premise systems that you want to get these certificates to. Firewalls is a really big use case we hear about. And just other services that aren't integrated with ACM, right? Like EC2 instances, EKS, and just containers in general. You want to get public certificates to terminate TLS on those devices. You need to be able to export the private key, right? Because you need that private key to actually terminate TLS. We'll talk a little bit about pricing too. This has been a driver for customers to reduce their costs because, as some of you know, public certificates can be pretty expensive. And so we've priced it, I think, very competitively, where you have each FQDN is $15 for each cert, and you only pay that once when you export the cert. So you may know already that when you request a public certificate and assign it to an integrated service like ALB, there's no charge, right? It's a free certificate. That is still true. You only pay for the certificate when you export it the first time, and then never again until it's renewed. So it's not like you're paying for it per month or anything like that. You pay for it the first time you export it, and then the next time it's renewed, you'll pay again after you export, right? So again, $15 per FQDN. So if you have 1.example.com and 2.example.com, that would be $30, right? Go ahead, yeah?
Is it the same if you had multiple SANs to a cert?
Yes, good question. Exactly. So say you had the regular common name and then you had 2 SANs, that would be 3 FQDNs, so $45. Yep.
Is that a one-time fee for the export or every time it's exported?
One-time fee for the export. So you can export that as many times as you like after that. Yeah, absolutely. Just the one-time fee. And then the next time that certificate is renewed, like the next year, it's technically a new certificate, so you would pay that again. But yeah, so you can continue to export that certificate as many times as you need.
Is it billed at the time of generation? Like, is it flagged as exportable? And that's because it's flagged as exportable, it's billed? Or even if I were to never export it?
No, that's a good question. So I'll repeat the question just so people hear it. So the question is, when you create the certificate, if you mark it as exportable, are you billed then? No, you are only billed the minute you export it. So when you call the export certificate API and you get that private key, that's when you'll be billed.
So then in theory, we could flag everything as exportable, but as long as nobody actually goes in and actually exports it.
Yes, that is true. The only thing I would say there is a bunch of customers, when we talked to them, said, I don't want my developers to just export any certificate. And so you have to mark it as exportable when you create or request a certificate. So if you originally request a certificate and you say this is not exportable, you will never be able to change that. I mean, you could reissue a new certificate for the same domain, but you won't be able to then change it later. And so my only kind of word of caution there is if you have that use case where you're like, some customers view it as a security feature that you cannot export that private key, right? And so I wouldn't necessarily advise putting everything exportable unless you have a use case for it, but yes, you could definitely do that.
Strictly for the building cost.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Sure.
Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself here, but if I wanted to test the life cycle of a certificate, including exporting it, then I only want the certificate for maybe a couple of days at the most.
Mm-hmm.
I have to basically pay for a whole year, right?
Yeah, effectively, yeah. Yeah, it's not prorated in that way. Yeah, unfortunately, yeah.
There's no way to get a short-lived certificate currently?
So there's 2 services, right? There's AWS Certificate Manager. It issues public certs and private certs. There is AWS Private CA, which we're not going to talk about too much in this session, but you can absolutely, there's a short-lived certificate mode for that, and those certificates are priced at a lower price per certificate, and they only live up to 7 days. So that would be like for customers that, hey, I have a Kubernetes workload, I rebuild my pods every single day, I don't need a cert that lives a year, I need a cert that lives a day, and I don't want to pay for a cert for a year. So you can do that with private certs. With ACM, at least today, the certificate template is kind of set in stone, and it's 365?
Yeah, 13 months.
Yeah, 13 months, sorry, that's right, 13 months. It's a 13-month certificate, so you can't change that validity period today. I can't say a whole lot more, but we're thinking about other ways to reduce that. Because as you may know, the CAB forum has made some changes where they're going to reduce the certificate lifetime, so we will, of course, adjust our service to deal with that.
Pricing? What about the pricing? Is it every 30 days?
That is also a very good question. So I can't say exactly here. If you talk to me in the hallway after, I can probably give some more detail. But yes, we will be addressing that. There will be a pricing change that will reflect the shorter renewal periods. Yeah, absolutely.
Because the first drop is like here in March or April.
Yes. Yeah, I can't say too much, but yes. If we talk, come find me after the hallway, we'll talk in more detail. But yes, we are absolutely planning for those changes, and the pricing will reflect that, and customers should not be paying more based on that. Hmm?
So prior to the export of the private key, it's in HSM?
Well, yes. So the way that ACM works basically is when you create a certificate in ACM, we generate a private key, and we wrap or encrypt that private key with a KMS key in your account. So there's a KMS key called the AWS managed key. It has an alias that says it should be AWS/ACM, and that key is actually used to protect the private key in your account. And that KMS key is protected by FIPS 140-3 level 3 validated HSM.
So the minute it's exported, it's no longer HSM, basically. It's no longer HSM, right?
That's right. When you export the private key, Praveen will show this, but it is exported encrypted. You basically set a passphrase when you export it. But yeah, it will no longer be, it will be exported from the service, so it wouldn't be protected by an HSM, right? And so Praveen will get into this a little bit on how we recommend securing those private keys. But yes, you're right. Like once you export that key, that's kind of what I was alluding to earlier with the security consideration, why you probably don't want to mark all of your certs as exportable right away, just because that does allow application teams to export that private key if they want to, and you probably want to make sure there's actually a real use case for that, to limit risk of key compromise. Good questions. Okay. Yeah. So the only other thing I think I didn't cover is the wildcard certificates. So wildcard certificates are priced a little bit differently at $149. So. Okay. Probably a lot of you, well, yeah, you're good.
So if I have the wildcard and I have sand attached to that, am I being charged $149 per sand?
Sorry, say that one more time.
So I do have, alternative names, right?
Mm-hmm.
That I add to the wildcard. So right now I would do that and I have like 3 alternative names.
Yeah. So say you had 3 SANs and then the regular common name, that would be 4 FQDNs, so it'd be 4 times 15. No, because the wildcard certificates, there's no, basically the wildcard, you wouldn't have SAN, you wouldn't be charged for the SAN in that way. It's the flat $140. $140. Yeah. So.
Multiple wildcard names on top of one cert?
No, you cannot do that. So you could only protect the one subdomain with, so like foo.example.com, bar.example.com, but not foo.bar.example.com. Yeah, that's right. So let me ask. So who here deals with certificates daily, or at least a lot? Probably everyone's familiar. Anyone have the experience of creating Outlook calendar reminders to renew your certificates? Oh yeah, I've been there too. So I think that's an obvious example of some of the challenges, right? You have things I talked about before, like if you have manual processes, you have a human being that has to go manually type in that cert and put it into a key store, and it's kind of all this whole manual process. Obviously, there's a lot of room for error. Certs and TLS tend to be a little bit finicky, as probably everyone knows. And so we do see these challenges from customers, and that's why we originally built ACM. And then, of course, why we built this feature to export the private key. And so aside from even just those manual installation challenges, you have things like all these different environments, right? You have Nginx running on EC2, you have your different load balancers and proxies and all these things where you might need to put a certificate, and there's not a super consistent way always to get the certificates where they need to go, basically. And then you have things like renewal gaps where you have an expired certificate that leads to some type of outage, and TLS stack's broken, and you're not able, your users aren't able to access your service, right? And so those are the things we want to avoid. We want to get to a place eventually where customers never have to think about certificates. It's just kind of an automated thing where they get renewed, they get placed where they need to go, and that's kind of what this solution that Praveen's going to show is attempting to do. And so when we look at what we wanted to, kind of the requirements we were looking to achieve when we built this, we wanted to look at things like event-driven architecture, right? Make sure that you have the ability to manually renew if you need to, but we really want it to be automated. We want it to be based on those CloudWatch alerts and Event Bridge alerts that are published when a certificate's about to expire. And so you'll see when Praveen shows the demo that there's kind of two ways to do it. You can manually renew, or you can have a event bridge rule that's basically listening for these events that say, hey, the certificate's about to expire. You need to trigger a Lambda, and you'll see the details of everything, but you need to actually export that cert and place it where it needs to go. We also wanted to make sure, of course, that that private key is secured. When you do export the cert, just like every other AWS API, it happens over HTTPS, so it is encrypted in transit. But you also specify a passphrase, and that cert will be encrypted with the passphrase. And in our case, we store that passphrase in Secrets Manager for more secure storage. And so when we get into these two types of workflows, like I talked about, we have the on-demand kind of method, which would be, hey, I'm going to manually renew this cert. Maybe it's some type of compromise. Maybe you just have a requirement where you need to manually renew it, earlier than you expected. And so you're able to trigger an API and just kind of manually renew that cert, right? Or I shouldn't say manually, but manually trigger the automation, I guess, is more accurate. And then you also have, like I mentioned, automated certificate renewal, where Event Bridge is doing that trigger, and we're listening for that, and we'll kind of, in an automated way, export that cert and put it where it needs to go. Any other questions before we talk about architecture? Oh, yeah?
There's support for like centralized, like a single domain in an organization where I can...
Single domain for...
cross-account basically. Like I can go down for one account and my domain. Right now we run a lot of subdomains in every account.
Yeah.
It's a lot of demand.
Yeah, so yes. So you can, when you export that key, you could definitely put it on a device in another account. Does our solution support that?
Yeah,
I think it
yeah.
does, yeah. Do you want to talk about that?
So what's the question?
Automation where I'm going to hold the key directly.
Sorry, can you repeat that? It's hard to hear.
Just make it more like automation. I don't want to have to manually export a key.
Oh, I see.
Do a cross-account customer roles.
Yes, you can do that. And I'm going to talk about that.
Yeah, we'll get into that in a second. Go ahead. So we use domain validation, so you need to create a CNAME record that proves you own that domain when you request the cert, regardless of whether it's wildcard or not. Yeah, and you could also use email validation. Again, it's not really something we recommend, but either way. Typically, if you use Route 53 for DNS, ACM will actually go and create that record on its own. Like, you don't need to kind of a one-click button, or it'll do it on its own. Whereas, you may need to update your DNS records manually if you have another provider. But yeah, as long as that CNAME record is there that proves you own that domain, we'll validate it and issue the cert. Any other? Oh, yeah.
Okay, you did mention that you can do the one-click update, but there's also a lot of times where your ACM and your Route 3 zone are in different accounts.
Yeah.
That causes problems. Have you guys thought of any solutions about allowing RAM shares for ACM so that it can be shared across multiple accounts to make it a lot easier?
Yeah, that's a good question. And that is something that customers have challenges with. So the question was about, maybe I have Route 53 zones in a different account that I'm issuing the certificate, and it doesn't have that same kind of integrated, seamless workflow around creating the CNAME record. Maybe let's talk in the hallway in more detail after, but yes, that is something we're aware of. What I often see customers do in that case is, as you probably know, when you issue the certificate, it publishes in the Event Bridge notification. There's basically the CNAME information you need, and oftentimes customers will have to kind of like create automation on their own to grab that record, put it in some kind of central repository, or feed it into another account and create the record through automation. It's like assume a role in the other account and do it. So there are ways customers do it today that are workarounds that you have to build. We're looking at ways to make that experience easier, but it's not something I can talk about right now. But yeah, it's a good question. Okay. Oh yeah, sorry, go ahead.
You mentioned in the prior slide that it's flexible to support an on-prem.
Sorry, you said on. You got to speak. Uh-huh.
So just curious to understand, does it mean it's about working it into any of the on-prem instances, or?
Yes, so Praveen will go into that a little bit on how we do that, but yeah, like So when you export that private key, I mean, obviously you can put it wherever you would like, right? What Praveen's going to talk about is how the sample code we've written helps you actually install that certificate securely on, for example, like an on-premise server. So he'll get into that, so I'm not going to get too into it because he'll get deep into that and show that in practice. But yes, you can absolutely do that for on-premise servers as well. Yeah. Okay. I think I'll pass over to Praveen. He's going to talk about the architecture, and then he'll kind of do a deep dive into the code and the demo.
Yeah, so I'll go over the architecture diagram. There are two workflows to this solution. This is the first workflow. This is on-demand certificate. What it requires is you already have a certificate issued with ACM, with DNS validated, and it is issued. Once you have the certificate, you need to have the ARN of the certificate. What we are going to do is we're going to have an API gateway, which will take an API. We have an API template which we will share. It is there on the sample code as well. You pass the certificate ARN and certificate name, details, and what this solution actually does is it actually goes and installs the certificate on EC2 instances. And it can do this at scale. So if you have multiple EC2 instances, you can install it on more than one EC2 instances as well, because it's tag-based. So what it's doing is using tags to identify which EC2 instance it needs to go and install. And what we are using internally is actually Systems Manager. How many of you here are familiar with System Manager? Okay. So for the folks who are not familiar with Systems Manager in AWS, it's basically a management solution that people use to manage their fleet of EC2 instances. If you have multiple EC2 instances, you want to patch them, you want to run ad hoc queries on commands on them, you could do that with Systems Manager. So it has a concept called as automation document. You can write your custom commands or scripts in that automation document, and you can run them at scale across multiple EC2 instances. So there's one gentleman asking about on-prem, right? So Systems Manager can also manage servers on-prem. So you could actually manage some of your EC2 instances through some of your on-prem servers through Systems Manager and run the commands and install the certificates on-prem as well. Going back to our solution, what we are trying to do is the first instance, you call the API, you tell what EC2 instances you need to apply the certificates on, you give the name of the certificate, and you give the ARN of the certificate. That's going to trigger a step function. A step function has 3 Lambda functions. The first Lambda function is to actually go and export the certificate from ACM. Now, for exporting a certificate from ACM, you need to pass a passphrase, which means the passphrase actually encrypts the private key as it comes out of ACM. Like I said, like Zach was talking about, inside ACM, the private key is encrypted by KMS. Once you bring it out, it's not encrypted. So we give you an encryption with a passphrase, so it's encrypted, and once it comes out. What we have done in this automation is you don't have to create or do anything with the passphrase. We will generate a dynamic passphrase, which even the user is not aware about. We're going to take that passphrase and we're going to store it in Secrets Manager. All right? And then we are going to take the private key and the public key, and we are going to pass it on to the second Lambda function. And we are also, if you see there is a DynamoDB table out there. What that DynamoDB table does is it actually stores the metadata about where the certificate is being installed. A lot of times when you export certificates out, people or customers tend to forget where that certificate's gone. I do not know where the certificate is right now, right? So what that DynamoDB table does is it stores exactly the tags where the EC2 instances, which each EC2 instance those are installed. It has the ARN, it has also got the expiry date and everything inside that. So if anytime you want to go and check, hey, how many certificates I have exported, where it is, what EC2 instances it installed, all that is there in the DynamoDB table. Once we have that, we pass the certificate details like private key, public key to the systems manager automation doc. Now, this example installs it on a Linux machine, which is a normal Amazon Linux machine. It goes into the cert folders and installs it. You could modify the automation document to do an installation, clean installation on an Nginx server or any custom application that you might have. It's just a bunch of commands that you have to run. You can do it. You can do it for Windows as well. If you have an IIS server that you want to update the certificate to, that's just another automation document, right? If you want to move that certificate outside to another cloud provider, you could do that too. But you may not be using Systems Manager at that point. You might have to use a different solution. So I'm kind of looking at trying to move this certificate into an external vault or somewhere from where it can be integrated by other cloud providers as well. But that's an extension I'm working, which I'll be working on for the next year, and I'll have a solution on the samples updated with that. But for now, it does it on EC2 instances, and it uses Systems Manager. And if you're planning to use any of this and you have a specific application or anything, absolutely feel free to reach out. I'm happy to help out if you're looking for any assistance or direction around how the code should look like, right?
It is also open source as well on GitHub, so feel free to contribute as well.
Yeah, and it's a GitHub resource. If you have questions, you can do, and I'm going to share the link where it is available. It's in AWS samples. So one of the key things of exportable certificate is that once the certificate is exported, it's customers, it becomes, we work on shared responsibility model. Once you export the certificate, it's customers' responsibility to secure that private key. So like I talked about, we did two things to make sure your private key is secured. So first one is, like I said, we generate the passphrase for you, and we store that passphrase inside a secret manager in the secret manager. And then we also tag the secret manager, that secret same as the EC2 instances. And what we are doing is actually we are doing ABAC, which is attribute-based access control, which means the EC2 instance tag, EC2 instance profile tag, and this secret tag needs to match for the EC2 instance to get the passphrase and decrypt the private key and use it in the application. So it's not like I put a secret somewhere and any EC2 instance can go and access that secret. It's attribute-based, so only specific EC2 instances where the certificate is installed, only they can go and access that secret to encrypt or decrypt the private key for their use, right? So those are the two key things that we give with this solution. Any questions on this until now? All right. Yeah.
So it would not go with an auto-discover existing certificates that we have installed. For example, I have my certificates that are once a year where we do all. Would it auto-discover that, or do I need to do it for setup?
No, so it cannot go and auto-discover certificates. It's only if you issue the certificates to ACM and you want to export it and install it outside, that's the part it is going to automate. And it's going to do a second part of the solution, which is the renewal of the certificate, right? So what we have is we have an event bridge rule created with the CloudFormation. What it does is looks for the event when the certificate, the public certificate is renewed. So your public certificate, which is exportable, they are basically renewed 60 days before the expiry. So before the certificate, so 60 days before when the certificate is renewed and issued, it will trigger off a job where we call our Lambda function. And that Lambda function actually takes the certificate ARN. It's able to look up based on the ARN whether that certificate was exported and installed on an EC2 instance. If it is, then it is going to take the relevant details from the database, and it is going to trigger the step function. And then the process is same. It's going to export the new renewed certificate. It's going to create a passphrase for it. It's going to update the passphrase in the secrets manager, and it's going to go and install those certificates exactly where it installed last time, running the same scripts. So what this means is you do not have to worry about renewal of the certificate even on your EC2 instances, this solution is going to automatically identify that and go and install it on your EC2 instances. And obviously, we have logging and everything enabled, so if there is any issues or anything, you will be able to go and check that and create alerts based on that as well. Yes?
You mentioned tags. So can we use the tags to identify the servers that need to be updated? Would it read the tags if I say, hey, this is my server that uses this certificate?
So there is a little, fundamentally there is no way based on tag or EC2 instance for us to identify what certificate is on that server unless you create an application that actually goes and does a grep across different folders and identifies the certificates on there. There is no easy way to identify what cert is installed in which server without knowing who put it there or where it is. There are solutions, third-party solutions that try to do it. The other way I've seen people do it is they identify the endpoint and try to do a TLS and see, get the certificate information based on that. Possible, yeah. So if even the agent will actually have to do a grep or something across the disk to identify the certificate, that is, what certificates are already stored on that device. So this solution doesn't do that. It only takes the exportable certificate, installs it on EC2, and then it also renews it for you at the end of it. So, all right.
This is just a proof of concept you did, right? This is not like AWS implementation.
Sorry, say that again?
This is like a proof of concept you did. It's not AWS.
That's right. Yeah, this is something that we built, published on GitHub as a sample code for customers. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
the exportable certs feature, of course, is a feature that the ACM service team built. But what Praveen's showing today is something that we built. And to the point about like certificate inventory, I would agree with Praveen that I typically see customers use partner solutions, like maybe familiar with like Venafi or AppViewX to go out and discover where certificates are placed. And as far as Acme, today ACM does not support Acme. Let's talk after and we can talk about roadmap. But today Acme is not supported by ACM.
Please.
Yep. We're being recorded, so I can't really talk about roadmap. But we're a customer-obsessed company. Many customers have asked for Acme, and you can infer what you will from that.
Yeah. So the next part is cross-account. Like some of the questions over here, how does it work cross-account? So yes, this solution does work cross-account. You have a CloudFormation template. You have to, there are a couple of CloudFormation templates in here. One is to do the central account implementation, which is all your step function and everything is in one account from where you want to issue your certificates and stuff. And then you just create some IAM roles for cross-account so that your systems manager is able to go and run commands on your EC2 instances, and then also your EC2 instances, once created, are able to go and access those secrets that are creating in that account. So what is the important thing here is the passphrase is actually stored in the same account as where the EC2 instance is. So I didn't want the EC2 instance to go back and get secrets from another account. So that's why we kind of cleaned up the solution to do that. So that's the solution. All right. Yeah, so that's the link for the GitHub code. So if you scan it, or if you just look for ACM's sample ACM export certificate automation in AWS samples, you will find the solution. It has a very detailed README. It talks about how to do the installation, how to test out the installation and everything. It's very detailed. And if you still have any issues, feel free to add a comment or something on there, or just reach out to me based on the email that will be shared at the end. All right. So now I'll switch to the demo mode to show exactly what we are doing. And before that, yeah, thanks. This is Kiro. So I built this solution in Kiro. I know Kiro is something everybody's talking about today. If you haven't tried Kiro, definitely try it. It's based on VS Code, but it's still it's pretty useful. So the template that you're seeing over there is the template for calling the API. So like I said, it takes the certificate ARN. You can give it a name, and then you have to give the target, the tag values, which is env and dev, is the tag value that I'm using, and the target account. So the account where you want to go and install the certificate as well. So you have to give these values, and this will trigger the step function. So I'm going to sit down and do the demo. If you have any questions or anything, raise your hands and let me know. The API gateway is actually IAM protected. So who calls the API? The person has to have the right or valid IAM role to actually invoke the API. So that's the security. It's not like anybody can export the certificate and put it on any EC2 instance. So we have added a layer of IAM as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use AWS curl command, which basically takes my IAM profile, which is on my desktop, and uses it to call directly instead of me passing the STS tokens through curl command. So you can see the execution ID. I'm going to come here. So that started the execution of my code. So first is the export cert. We have the input of the certificate ARN on all the details. What it did is actually it exported the certificate, and it also did is it added the secret in the secret, and this is the whole encrypted public-private key that you're seeing out here. And this details is now, so if you see the certificate name is demo December 2. After that, after creating everything in the secrets manager and stuff, it's going to call the systems manager for the automation document. So I'm passing all the certificate details to the systems manager, and it's going to execute, and if you see here, there is an automation execution ID. That means that the execution has started, the automation execution has started. This is a cross-account deployment. I am on account starting with 70, and this is going to install on another account which starts with 090. So you could see that it's going to do a cross-account.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so we do have examples of cross-account there. Great.
Yeah. So a lot of times the automation takes some time if you're installing on multiple EC2 instances across, so there is a wait section on that. It basically waits for the automation document to complete successfully, and once it has the automation status completed, it just moves to success rates based on the number of EC2 instances installed. If it fails to install on any one EC2 instance also, it will generate an error, and you'll have to go back and see in the systems manager as to what exactly happened there, right? So this code is going to do all that. So this is the DynamoDB table, and I told you that it's going to have all the details of the certificate. So it has a key, a primary key. It has the certificate ARN. It has the certificate's expiry date. It also has the certificate name that you gave. So in this case, we did a December 2, so that's the one. It has the details of where the passphrase is stored, of your secrets manager, where the passphrase is stored, and which target account that certificate is installed. Even that detail is available in the database. So if you want to check anything, what's going on, you can do that from here. Any questions until now? So I'm going to the other account.
Praveen, questions back?
Yes.
So this solution, right, is it expandable to ECS clusters as well?
That's a good question. I actually was trying to do that, whereas I didn't get any customer feedback on people who wanted to go on EC2 clusters. But if it's an EC2 instance and you can run an automation document on it, you will be able to install it anywhere over there. It should not be an issue.
The code as it exists today doesn't have like run documents like Praveen mentioned for ECS, but there's no reason you wouldn't be able to, that's good feedback, and I think we can adjust it to include that. Because yeah, like you will definitely be able to put that private key on an ECS task, but we haven't built that into the solution as of right now, yeah.
Yeah. You have a custom solution for what? I'm sorry? Service mesh. No, I don't think we did that, right?
No, so you mean for like MTLS between services? Yeah, so really public certificates, which is what we're talking about today, you can no longer really use them for MTLS because you might be aware another CAB forum change recently was that public certificates are no longer allowed to have what's called the client auth extended key usage, which is necessary for MTLS. So this particular kind of solution and public certificates would not work there. I mentioned a service, AWS Private CA, earlier. That you can absolutely issue private certificates of any template, and as long as it's X509, you can adjust that template however you'd like. And so we do have customers that use that for service-to-service communication. There was a service called AWS App Mesh that sometimes customers would use for that. I more commonly see customers use partner solutions like Istio today. So yes, but you would not necessarily be doing that with these public certs as you're not able to anymore. That would be something you would look at private certs with AWS Private CA or Windows PKI or something like that. Anytime you're using a private cert, that's where you would do that MTLS between services, for example.
So this is the EC2 instance. It has the tag env and dev, so it went and installed it on this one. This is the instance profile of that EC2 instances, basically what IAM roles that EC2 instance has. And if you see, this is the IAM policy that was added to the EC2 instances, which is using tag-based access to actually go and access the secret that is created by the automation at this point. So if you go ahead and check for the secrets over here, you will see that it has created a secret. Right now, this is a brand new secret created, which has the passphrase, and it also has the tags attached to it. So basically what it did is it went to the other account, it installed the certificate, and I can show the certificates that are installed over here, and this is exactly what I didn't want it to happen. So it logged me out. All right. And we can actually go and check the certificate. So I have commands ready on that. So right now it is installing the certificates on EC2 SSL certs folder in this Linux machine. So if I run the grep, if you can see those two certificates, so this is the public certificate, so it has the full chain of the certificate and the certificate as well in there. And then the private key actually goes in another folder, which is SSL private over here, and that's the private key that is installed in that server, which is cross account. Now to access that certificate, I have a small script which will actually extract the passphrase from the secrets manager. And I can use that passphrase now to actually decrypt the private key, which is that. So a lot of times some applications ask for private key unencrypted, or some ask for private key with a passphrase inside the application. So depending on how you want it, your EC2 instance now has access to retrieve the passphrase and do the changes on that part, right? So that's the cross-account part. So this is the part one of the solution where you exported a certificate and installed it on an EC2 instance. Now the part two of the solution is the event bridge part. So when you install this CloudFormation template, this service actually installs event bridge rule, which actually looks for a specific pattern. Now, I modified it. If you look at the source over here, it says test. But when you actually run the CloudFormation template, it will be ACM service. Now, why I did that? Because I want to manually invoke this event to show the flow. But when you actually do it, you don't need to run it manually, right, for testing purposes. As soon as the ACM generates the event, your flow will be kicked off. In my case, for it to renew and do the step, it takes a few minutes. And so it's not good for demo purposes, but that's why I changed the source to test. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trigger this event, and this event is actually going to go and trigger a step function. So let's look at that. So there is command on how to trigger this event as well inside the code sample that I showed you, that is there. So let's run this from here. There you go. So that should have triggered an execution over here. Let's see. So it's running 3 execution because the ARN of that certificate is attached to 3 different EC2 entries. So it's going to renew it in all 3 places in the database. So that's why you're seeing 3 instances. But what it's doing now is it's actually doing the same steps. It got the details from the DynamoDB table as to where all these certificate is being referenced. And then from there, it's actually taking it and moving it to, and taking those details and going and installing it as is. So this is basically hands-off, just like application load balancer, CloudFront. Once you install the certificate with ACM, you just forget about it. It renews on its own. Similarly, with EC2 instance, this solution can renew on its own as well. So that's how this would work. Any questions on any of this at this point? Yes.
So the only prerequisite for this to work is to make the certificate exportable, right?
Yes.
Okay. It's because we have a few certificates that are both hosted in AWS and on-prem load balancers. So this will work fine for the on-prem load balancers if the certificate is exportable.
Yeah, so if you have services that are already integrated with ACM, like application load balancer, CloudFront, API gateway, etc., for those services, you don't have to worry about it. It will just, it does it out of the box. The problem comes when you export the certificate and move it on easy. I have customers who are also trying to use this solution to export the certificate and put it on a S3 bucket or somewhere for a third-party team to pick up the certificate and install it on some custom solutions as well, because they don't want to do the automation to go and install it directly inside somewhere, because they have a very specific use case. All they want is a self-service where somebody requests the certificate and go. You could actually modify the IAM rules and policies as well and the Lambda function to allow specific teams to only request specific certificates based on their tag or naming conventions as well. So you could add that customization in the Lambda function side as well. So if you have those kind of requirement, you could do the modification, or if you need any help around that, if there are a lot of requests coming in saying, hey, I want to see that, you could do that. Because I was playing around with that, and yes, you could actually do a little bit more fine-grained access control on how the certificates are being.
Yeah, it uses IAM condition keys, so you would basically write a policy that says, only app team A can request certificates with the domain name example.com, and app team B can request certificates with foo.com, but not example.com, right? So you can create condition keys like that in IAM policy or SCPs, for example, or service control policies, to limit that, as well as things like key type, right, like RSA versus ECC and things like that. So you can get fine-grained with those permissions. And to your point about like having the certificate on a managed service as well as on-prem, even if the certificate is marked as exportable, managed renewal with integrated services still works the same way. So it would still be renewed in the same way on, say, like your application load balancer, and then you would also get a notification through EventBridge that, hey, a new certificate is available for export, and you could either manually export or use a solution like this to grab it automatically.
Through that granular control that you were just talking about, would it be possible to restrict requests for wildcards to still allow the root naming convention? But this, so any FQDN at the subdomain level is fine, but not the wildcard.
Yes, you can specifically restrict wildcards from being issued because some customers say, I don't want my customer or my developers to ever issue wildcards. Yes, you can absolutely do that.
Yeah. All right, switch it to presentation.
Sure. Yeah, so let me kind of wrap up here. And then again, like if folks have other questions, feel free to ask. We have about 9 minutes left. And then after that, we'll be out in the hallway if you want to talk more, particularly about roadmap stuff. We can absolutely talk a little bit about that in the hallway. So yeah, just key takeaways that we want you to remember after the session. Obviously, we want you to think about this new feature from ACM, exportable public certificates. Think about how you're going to manage renewals for certificates that you export the private key for, whether it's something like this or a more manual process. Obviously, we want you to get to this place of automation when you can, but it's becoming more and more important, like we talked about with those CAB forum changes. Someone pointed out, I think in March, it's going down to 180 days, and then I believe by 2029, it's 47 days, right? So, for customers that are doing this manually, if you have hundreds of certificates that you have to renew manually about every month or so, a month and a half, that's not super sustainable, right? And so, even if you're not doing all this through automation today, we're definitely encouraging customers to start moving more towards automated solutions for replacing these certificates. And then the other thing would be, when we're looking at, when you look at that sample code, we just want to keep in mind that you want to protect that passphrase of that private key because that's how it's encrypted, and you want to kind of limit the risk of that public key being put accidentally somewhere and then being able to be decrypted, right? Like blogged somewhere in your application or accidentally put on GitHub or something, and so you want to protect that with a passphrase and store that passphrase in a very secure place. And that's why when Praveen and I built this sample code, we put it in Secrets Manager, and we specifically generated it through, there's an API in Secrets Manager called getRandomPassword, I think it's getRandomPassword. And so no human being sees that secret. It's put in Secrets Manager, and even your developers and whatnot shouldn't be able to access that. It's just the automated service can access it. And then I think like another piece is, we designed it with the tag-based approach just because that makes it easier to understand, again, like where are these certificates placed, which EC2 instances have which certificate, and through those tags and that DynamoDB table that Praveen mentioned and showed, that's kind of how we're looking at that, right? And then, last thing would be, of course, like with the question around ECS, there are going to be some customizations for this. This is just, like we mentioned earlier, kind of a POC sample code we built. So, definitely feel free to reach out to Praveen and I, or contribute back to the GitHub code and make our life easier if you want to do it for us. But we're happy to do it as well if you have specific things you want to see added to this. So just let us know.
Also, just to add to it, Zach, right? So if you have is anybody over here looking to actually use ACM certificate outside AWS environment, like on a third-party cloud provider and stuff like that? Like, okay.
On-prem?
On-prem is fine. On-prem, yes. What about Azure and stuff? Yeah. So I'm actually working on something where it moves it to the vault over there. There is recently some new IAM method that has come out where you could actually generate JWT tokens, authenticate to a third party, and put stuff in there. So I'm trying to work on that, but that's something we can talk about after this.
We were in a position where our Azure VMs managed by SSM.
So you see that?
In that case, I don't know that we've tested that, but I believe that should work, right? If they have VMs in another cloud provider that are managed by SSM, that should
Yeah,
work.
if you have an if
We just wrote an automation against it then, from SSM, which is what managing our AWS.
So the way SSM works is as long as there is an agent running there and its connectivity back is there, it should work. That's how on-prem works, so I don't see why it wouldn't work on any other cloud provider.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, as long as the
definitely
agent's
works.
installed and has a network path and access to the API and whatnot, yeah, absolutely should.
All right.
Okay, any other questions or anything before we wrap up? Happy to answer anything.
There's one.
Is there a link or something to the code on GitHub that you can?
Yeah, will you throw that back up?
Yeah, just go to the next slide.
Oh, yes, thank you. Yeah, right there. Yeah, you can grab that, or I think if you search AWS samples, export cert automation, it should come up as well. But yeah, that's the GitHub link there.
Yeah, even if you look up, do a chat GPT, it actually brings up that solution. I've seen it.
Okay, cool.
How do you automate certificates in AWS? And one of the solution is that one.
I did not know that. That's neat. All right. Okay, any other questions?
All right.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much. And feel free to find us in the hallway if you have other questions, want to talk through anything. Thank you.
Thank you.